It looks like a lot of people are coming, more than I expected. Of course, we can't,
Yeah.
I don't,
And so for those of you, I guess, who don't know or have never seen Fran Forman and Michael, take it away.
okay, thank you. I'm going to share the screen. So there's no music accompaniment. You just have to listen to my voice. As you recall, about a year and a month ago, Michael and I got together and wondered what we could do for the photo community, because we were very concerned about the change of life for all of us. People were anxious, people were scared, nobody had a sense of how long this was going to go on. I certainly didn't think it would go on for as long as it had. I thought, okay, I can be locked down in my house for about a month or two. I'll look at it like a snow day and think I can get stuff done. And then 1 month led to another and another, and then there was the election. So as you all know, this was a very long process, but Mike and I thought that it would be helpful for photographers to express themselves visually with their image creations. And Michael came up with the name Internal Dialogue. So these were the winning entrants, the winners of the particular show. And I have the names, of course I can't get to the names of the artist.
Fran and Michael, how many entries were there? Do you remember?
Wow. I don't remember offhand. There were quite a few, because I know that it took Fran and I a long time. I think we did it in 2 sessions too. We kind of narrowed it down to about a third, and then we arm wrestled over who was going to be the final in the final show. And we didn't have a final, you know, we weren't looking for a set number. We just wanted to go through them all, and then, you know, we knew that when we found an endpoint for the show, it would become readily apparent to us, and I think that it was. And while Fran and I have, you know, I think that there are a lot of differences in the type of work that we do and in the ways that we think. There are still probably just as many similarities in terms of process of how we come to choose a certain photograph for an exhibition. And I know for me, this was the first time that I had kind of co-curated a show with somebody, where we both went over the images together and, you know, gave them a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or let's set that aside and come back to it later. And we both had, there were times where we would immediately look at a photograph and just say, yes, that's definitely got to be in the show, because it screamed what we were looking for. And essentially, most of the photographs that are in this show kind of hit that mark. A few of them we had to, you know, we kind of had to sit with a little bit and discuss and decide whether or not we felt that they had a place within the exhibition. Not because that they weren't strong by any means, but because we wanted to present this as a fairly well-rounded exhibition and show a lot of different styles and a lot of different concepts and ideas that people were portraying and feeling really with their work. So again, I don't remember how many there, but there were quite a few, and it did take us at least a couple of hours, I think, to really go through everything.
Sorry.
Oh, Blue just sent a message. There were 125 artists, so
Okay.
there you go.
Great. And narrowed it down to, what was it, 32, 28?
I I think there's 31, if I'm not mistaken.
Part of the reason we kept it down to 30 was we were thinking in terms of a physical exhibition,
Yeah.
and we were limited by the amount of space that we would have at Bob's Gallery. So that was one thing. But also, Michael, we really agreed, I would say on 75%, maybe 80% of the images at the beginning. And then you're right, then we had to do a little arm wrestling.
Which Fran usually won.
No, I was about to say you won.
She is strong, I know.
No, he was being polite.
And honestly, yeah, she's right. There weren't many that we had to really kind of discuss, but it's interesting. I mean, once we go through them, we'll discuss them all one by one, but there were definitely a couple that I wouldn't normally have thought to include in the exhibition, but after discussing it with Fran and thinking about how the images might fit, my mind was usually changed for the better to include more than I think I may have initially. Well, I see are you here? Is your camera on, Blue? It's not going to answer me.
I can't. Can you see me?
Well, there
Can
you
you
are.
hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, that's good.
Blue, it's very nice to meet you.
You too, Bob.
So should we go through them one by one?
Yeah, I think we got enough people here. I think
Yeah, we have quite a few.
there we go.
Okay, this is Nancy's.
Nancy, speak up.
Okay. First, just thank you to Fran and Michael, and certainly to Blue and Bob. It's really nice to be included in this exhibition. So this is 7 o'clock applause, and it belongs to my visual journal, which was called Our Place During the Pandemic. And it was about me, Rich, and our wonderful golden doodle, Oliver. And of course, this was in New York City, 7 o'clock. I guess we were just following suit with some of the Western countries that were opening their windows and coming out on their balconies, playing music and applauding. And this was really an applaud that was honoring healthcare workers initially, and then shortly afterwards, I think it opened up and really was applauding all essential workers. But for me, it was really a very spirited and spiritual moment, because I really felt that the applause itself was bridging all of us together and connecting us, and just, making us all realize that we're all in this together, and making us aware of our humanness. And certainly we were coming to terms with the fragility of life.
When this, Nancy, when this image came up, both Michael and I agreed immediately that it would be in the show. And it's a strong composition in addition to the message that you're giving. And it was very timely, very specific to that period of time. And I just personally love the way the light on the rectangle of light on the far building replicates the light from inside this man's window. I just think it's a really wonderful composition.
Thank you.
I would agree. That's something that I'm always that I react immediately to is the light that's in the photograph. And Fran's right. I think we both kind of just, when the image popped up, we literally just said, yes. There was no, we understood what was happening. And compositionally, it's a beautiful image. And Nancy, you said did you say that this was kind of part of a visual journal that you had been working on? Were you specifically working on a COVID body of work?
Oh yeah, this was, I was just like everyone else. In the beginning, I was so overwhelmed by everything that was going on. And one of the things that I took comfort to was when I realized that a lot of the photography community were documenting themselves and, you know, really photographing their life during the pandemic. So it didn't take me long, though I resisted it initially. I said, I have to turn the camera on my own family and myself, because this really is, this is worth recording.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree.
Not necessarily, you know, I'm just saying worth recording in that I think everybody's household was so charged with emotions. So
the next one is by Emmanuel. Are you here, Emmanuel? I know you were.
Yes, Fran. I prepared a little text. First of all, I would like to say how happy and proud I was to be part of the exhibition International Dialogue. And I would like warmly thank Fran Forman and Michael Kirchoff for choosing my pick, Rêverie. And great thanks to Bob Korn and the gallery upstairs. Having worked for 2 years in a Parisian hospital considered as one of the temples of psychoanalysis, it's Sainte-Anne. I don't know if, Fran, you know this hospital, wonderful in Paris, Sainte-Anne. Sainte-Anne. The internal dialogue is for me an immense wealth and strength. This young woman lets herself go dreaming and And at that terrible time when we are so unhappy and distressed, locked in our homes, Rêverie can appear as a force. I'm sorry, it's very little, but I think if we are all in the world locked in our houses, I don't know in USA if you can travel as you want, but here in France we are a new time locked from 1 month. We must return to at home at 7 o'clock. It's horrible, and this is for everybody in this world can provoke. Comment tu dis provoke? Can get I don't know how to say it. Depression, nervous breakdown. But I think if we can have introspection and we can have a great force, comment tu dis force? Force, and perhaps grâce à, comment tu dis grâce à? The psychoanalysis can help us, and the rêverie too, at home.
Well, I thought this is a beautiful image, Emmanuel. And to me, it suggested the solitude and the anxiety of what everyone was going through at this period of time. And this young woman, is this your daughter, by the way?
No, it's a model. It's Penelope.
Well,
there are twins, Penelope and Valentine, but here is Penelope. I love her.
But this resonates for me partly because she looks as if she's exhausted, as if she's had, that she's somehow in the midst of a period of anxiety as well as exhaustion. and it's very dreamy as well. And it's also beautifully composed. It looks like a painting. So I think this was just a beautiful piece. And I don't think Michael and I argued about this one either.
No, not at all.
It's just
Um,
beautiful.
And it's funny too, because I think that Fran's observation that she sees like anxiety and involved in here, I also kind of see, to me, it represented feelings of more like melancholy, because I know that one of the things that I had felt early on, post anxiety, after there was some initial anxiety about what was going on in the world. The more we realized what was happening, the more that anxiety reared its ugly head. But shortly after that, for me, I think it kind of brought on feelings of melancholy, because everybody was so isolated. Whether or not you had, family members in your home or not, I mean, I remember there were times where I was literally just kind of staring off at the wall for long periods of time and kind of thinking about past events, about how quickly I missed the things that I had been doing prior to this, and felt that I had taken them for granted. So being able to kind of have that time to look back and appreciate those times that I had before, especially when we don't even know, or we didn't know how long this was going to go. I know that initially there were a lot of people saying, oh, it'll just be a couple of weeks. And then it was, oh, it'll just be a month. And then, oh, maybe 6 months. And then immediately everybody was like, we're in this for at least a year or more. So I definitely I kind of empathized with the woman in the photograph as being just sliding off into dreamland to a certain degree, and wondering what the world was going to turn into.
Thank you so much.
So this is by Parrish Dobson. Do you want to talk about it? Unmute.
Hello, everybody, and thank you all for convening this. It's such a nice format because you get to meet people plus see their work. So I'm really enjoying it so far. Anyway, thank you. Okay, so this image was made actually before the pandemic. I'm a photographer, obviously, but chiefly I work in landscape, but and quite a bit in interiors as well. But I had made this image before the pandemic, when I had done a volunteer gig to go to a big public Boston school in not a great neighborhood to judge their debate teams, and on a Saturday. And this image, this window, and I photographed several others, was in their library. And I have to just say, as an educator, imagining myself a student, say, in the library and seeing this every day, it made me feel very kind of sad, because for a number of reasons, just the feeling of a blocked view, something kind of desolate on the outside, all the things that this evokes. So when I heard of the call for this, when we were in the pandemic, I immediately thought of this as an equivalent to the feelings that were already coming up, as Michael just said, a kind of melancholy, the constraint, the barrier. I mean, I think it's just inevitable to feel organic threat at the window. Perhaps a safe space within that this image connotes. I love the muted palette of it. I kept the light in to make sure that we kind of knew the viewer was located in a interior space and somewhat institutional. Anyway, the combo, as I say, of the vines plus the frosted glass produced for me a sense of very much an equivalent to the pandemic. And then as a former teacher, it had just resonated what the students were also being left out of during this pandemic, the threat to schools as well, something like that. So anyway,
I think it's very
love to hear what you
beautiful.
have to say.
I think it's very beautiful. And for me, it's the sense of being locked inside and gazing out at a world that's not available at that particular time. And I'm glad you left the light in, because I just think it's a wonderful compositional device too.
I would agree. I think if you had cropped out that light, then it would have, you know, the image would have looked much more like a painting rather than a photograph. And in looking through the window, I mean, the scene outside to me looks very kind of stormy and tumultuous. But then the inclusion of the light just grounds it in reality, so that now it seems like the window has kind of become a shield to that outside world, you know. And yeah, we're isolated, but we're also to a certain degree protected. And I think that was, you know, certainly a very COVID related theme, like everybody was seeking protection to a certain degree. And to me, this image really represented that.
Yeah.
Go on to the next one. Thanks, Parrish.
Yeah, thank you.
Rick, is he here? I don't see him.
I don't think so.
I thought he said he was going to be here, but maybe not.
Well, just when Michael and I saw this, it just spoke to us immediately because of the flag that seems to be losing its tether. And that was exactly what we were feeling last spring. So I'm not going to belabor it, but it just was a perfect symbol of what we were feeling our country was going through.
Yeah, again, this was definitely one of the handful of images that I had really thought represented what I was feeling, not just what we were looking for, but what I was feeling. And thinking back to when we were doing this, I don't think that, I mean, there was more than COVID that we ended up dealing with last year, right? There was the death of George Floyd, the protests that ensued, Black Lives Matter, and all of these things. That idea of becoming untethered as a country seemed to be furthering itself day after day after day, to the point where you wondered at what point do things just snap and we lose our country entirely, and so in one way or another. I mean, it was going that direction for such a long time, and this image to me was just like, well, yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Absolutely. So this is Joanne's. I don't know that Joanne is here. I don't think she's here, but you see her on the list?
Let me check the list. If you're here, Joanne, unmute yourself. No, I do not believe she is.
No, I don't think so. It's a beautiful image of, and it reflects certainly how I was feeling, just forlorn, a sense of solitude. It's obviously winter when this image was made, and speaks to I think the anxiety that we were feeling at that period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that, I think she had submitted, I think 2 or 3 images from a specific body of work that I don't know if it was necessarily COVID related when she started it, but that definitely became part of her dialogue with that body of work. I think that we actually had a hard time deciding which of her images to include, because they were all very strong. So, but this one definitely fit the bill. So I'm glad that we included it.
And Andre?
I believe she's in.
I have a show let's see, in June at a new gallery, Gallery Manhattan.
Whoever is speaking to somebody, if you could please mute yourself. Congratulations, you have a new show, but please,
Brooklyn, they're okay so long as it's not.
please mute yourself.
And so, yeah, so there won't be a conflict.
We get to hear everybody's secrets.
Yes.
Yeah, careful what you talk about. We're recording.
So Michael, do you want to talk about this? I think this was one of your
Sure.
selections.
This is one of the images I've seen some of her work before, and she deals a lot, at least in terms of process, with using Polaroid as a chief component of her work. Which, of course, if anybody knows anything about me, that's kind of also something that I love to use in my work is especially original Polaroid materials. So anytime I see that kind of, especially the SX70, that quintessential square format, I'm kind of immediately drawn to not just that, but the color palette. So the softer color palette and the dreamy quality that you get out of that sort of work lent itself well to the image. And then in terms of the content, I was really, I found it a little bit confusing and at the same time oddly appropriate for what we were doing, because I wasn't quite sure what she was holding, why she was wearing the hood over her face, or what she was exactly saying. But in doing that, that's exactly what kind of said it all for me in terms of using this as one of the images in the show. And I know Fran responded quite well to it initially.
Yeah, I thought it was funny, but it also the thing that's pulled over her face reminded me of all the crazy things we had to go through last spring, cleaning every surface, covering our bodies, basically living in hazmat suits. And so that's what this reminded me of. So the next one is Anna Landa. Don't know that she's here.
Oh, I thought she was here. No, I guess not. She was here earlier. I could have sworn.
Well, she missed it.
Okay.
This is Coco Martin. She had submitted a few, and I remember we debated which of those we wanted to include. There was just something very lonely about this, very isolated, a woman alone with her cat, which was essentially what people were going through this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was just wonderfully composed. And I love the fact that the cat is looking at the woman and the woman is looking off into space in this dreamy way.
Yeah, that's what did it for me for this image, is the fact that the cat is watching her intently. She's off in dreamland,
Yeah.
wondering what's going on in the world, and the cat is just focused on her. And I know that that's something that happened a lot with people and their house pets, was their animals were all confused as to why was everybody home all the time. So again, and honestly, again, beautifully composed. I love the black and white and the light that's coming in through the doorway off camera is absolutely beautiful.
And I love the little teapot off to the right. This is Susan. Susan's here. Do you want to talk about this?
Sure. Hi, all.
Hi, Susan.
First of all, thank you, Fran, Michael, Blue, Bob. It's nice to meet you here. Fran, I know already. Yeah, I always, I love to photograph in the home, and I've done a lot of work at home. And for a long time, I've been photographing my husband. It's part of a body of work called Second Time Around. And when the pandemic, well, this was made toward the end of last March, when we were first in lockdown, and it was apparent that we were going to be in lockdown for a while. And I think at that point we were ordering in groceries all the time. I don't think we were going out at all. And we were, like time took on a different, like weird meaning. Like, what do you do all day? I mean, we used to be in and out all the time doing things. And here we were like all day for stretches of time. So one afternoon, I guess we took showers and, we were laying in bed and just sort of laying there. And I took my camera and I said, I don't know, I just wanted to photograph the feeling of being together, just together alone kind of thing. And so that's really what it is. I kept making this work all the way through the pandemic. And then after a while, I decided I wanted to sort of do something a little different, and I started doing self-portraits, still about being in the pandemic, being locked down, and that's that feeling of kind of mild depression that you have, when it's going on months and months and you're home all the time. So.
Yeah, I think I'm familiar with a lot of your work, Susan, and it's interesting to me that this image, and like you mentioned, some of the images that you've made since, it was very much kind of in your wheelhouse to be photographing in this way.
Yeah,
it wasn't the same necessarily, but it was similar because, like you say, you document life at home, and you had been photographing your husband quite a bit.
Mhm.
So including yourself in this, in terms of, everybody's isolating in place, but you're isolating together. And it was a different experience for a lot of people, the people who were doing it solo versus the people who were doing it as a couple or as a family.
exactly.
And I think that brought a special perspective to the exhibition by including this image in it. So I know that, again, Fran and I both immediately responded well to this, and it was included almost immediately.
Oh, thank
I
you.
love the fact that everything is off kilter, which
Yeah.
I'm sure was intentional. I love that you have your painted toenails and your husband's wearing his socks. I just think it's so charming, and your feet are touching. So I find this very loving, just really, really welcoming in many ways. So
Thank you.
we love this one. And whoopsie, Mansolino,
Yes,
are you here?
I am. Yeah.
Oh, great. Hi.
Yeah, this image is from a series I did in March of last year. I was away at an artist residency when all of this started, so it was strange to be away from home while the world started shifting and changing and becoming unfamiliar. And so I'm in Canada, and the artist residency was in Blairmore, Alberta, which is a very small town in the Canadian Rockies. And sort of watching everything fall apart and looking through the windows of a space that wasn't mine into a place I didn't know. I had brought all of these materials to work with and then realized none of it mattered. I had to make sense of what was going on outside right now. And so I just photographed consistently through the windows, which I know a lot of people did because you're inside, so you photograph through the windows, but trying to focus on the window itself and the barriers and the way through, and to really make that pane of glass that provides the sense of safety, the focus of the work, and the way the ice crystals are appearing on the glass, the way the fence outside, being able to see glimpses of things but not really make sense of it, and created a document over the course of the month that I was there of the changing of the seasons and the way the ice crystals would change and look like constellations in the sky in the middle of the day if you really focused on those, as this way of making sense of the experience of just being in an unfamiliar place, and trying to feel safe and trying to make sense of it. I don't know if you can see me, but I put them all together in a book with text that I wrote.
That's
Yeah.
terrific. Oh, terrific.
looking at, bugs on the glass and fingerprints on the glass and all the different things that defined, being inside during that time as a record of that month and the things I was thinking. And then driving around in the car and seeing like, okay, is the car, being in the car is like an inside that's like an outside, the extension of inside, and what we did to feel safe and how things changed, and watching the ice melt, as the sense that all the sense of certainty that we had before this was also just kind of liquefying and melting. So using that as a way of making sense of that whole experience of being away during a time when the world transformed.
Well, we had no idea of the backstory, but that makes it even more interesting. So thank you. I had no idea whatsoever, but I just love the use of the ice crystals to tell this story too. So where was your residency in Alberta?
Yeah, the Gushel Studio. It's in Blairmore, Alberta. It's run by University of Lethbridge. So I live in Canada.
I can tell by your accent.
I'm actually from California originally, so maybe I've picked up the accent since I moved up here. No.
I'm sure you say schedule.
Oh no, I say schedule.
Well, this is wonderful.
Thank you.
I thought this was a wonderful image, and I'm like diptychs and triptychs, I'm always a sucker for, and part of the reasoning is it's either right or it's wrong, and if it's right, you know it immediately, and this was one of those instances. All three pieces of the puzzle work well together, and they created something that looks more like just one photograph entirely. And the intriguing part about it for me was the center image, because I was unsure of what exactly I was looking through. I knew it was like a window, but I was wondering is that just the ice melting, or is the window broken? So I had the fact that there were questions involved that came up, to me, made it more of an intriguing piece overall. So
thank you. And I liked the ambiguity, because it was a time in which we were trying to make sense of things all the time, and there was never clarity. And right. I like trying to use the materials at hand to really emphasize that sense of uncertainty and not knowing.
Yeah. Do you have this work on your website?
I do. Yeah. The whole body of work. It's called Safe Inside.
I'd like to look through the rest of it as well.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it's in the book art section, because I put the whole thing together into a book. So if you look under book arts, and you'll find it.
Excellent.
Thank you. I'm honored to be included. Thank you so much.
This is Carl van der Linde. Very powerful image. I don't know if Carl's here.
I did not see him on the list, no.
Okay.
And it's too bad, because I kind of wanted to know what the backstory of this image was.
I don't know, but it obviously resonated, because I think both of us picked this immediately.
Right.
It's a little bit about how we were feeling at that.
Is it okay for us to comment? I mean, how the hand becomes the mask,
sure.
And
yeah,
that's just so powerful. The gesture, and then the writing on the hand is
right, which is where his mouth would be.
Yeah, staggering.
And the expression on his face, it's almost one of terror.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, it also became representative of the social unrest that we were going through too, and which I think was, again, it was something that was kind of just starting when we were going through all of this. So it immediately kind of represented that for me as well.
Heidi Temple's Lockdown. Michael, you loved this the first time you saw it. I remember.
I did. I don't think I had to talk you into it, but I think that
you did a little bit. I was ambivalent.
Yeah. I think just the compositionally and creatively, I just thought it was a very kind of telling piece. I don't know. It had, for me, it had the ideas or the concepts of being in prison to a certain degree. It reminded me, if you've ever seen any movie you've ever seen where somebody comes to visit another person in prison and they're on either side of the glass and they have to use the telephone to speak to one another. And a frequent thing that happens is one person will put their hand up on the glass and the other person will bring their hand up to meet it because they can't actually physically touch one another. So this kind of had that quality that resonated with me. And it just seemed very, like somebody had just commented about how powerful it is. And I think that that's probably the right word, definitely. Lori Abrams mentioned that it's powerful, and yeah, absolutely.
And we were wearing gloves a lot. We felt that we had to wear gloves a lot. I think that was also part of it.
Right, that's true.
Amy Abishai.
I do not see Amy listed, no.
Well, my understanding of, oopsie, I already lost it. My understanding of this is that the numbers were the numbers of days that she had felt locked down, and that so she was counting the days. This was obviously early in the process because it ended up being a lot more days than we see here, but it was just very well done.
True, and I wondered, for all of the artists, how many people were actively photographing and entering this, entering into this competition, and how many people were using images that had already existed and they felt represented what we were looking for. So that's kind of something that I'm kind of curious about, especially moving forward now, about whether or not people actually photographed with the intention of representing this theme or not.
Well, it's internal dialogue part 2.
Oh, true.
Laura?
Laura's here, right?
Is my volume okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Excellent. First of all, thank you. I really was honored and pleased to be accepted to this show. You know, Fran, I followed for a long time. Michael, I think I followed you for a long time. Being in a show with my dear friend Diane, and just, you know, just lots of people that I'm familiar with their work. For me, this has been, you know, like for most people, 2020 was quite the adventure. But like Anne, I was in a new place at a new time. We had come up to visit a dear friend who has an Airbnb up in Niagara Falls, and then the world like closed. So financially, that's sort of bad for her. And we were like, just put our stuff in storage, and we're in the middle of a move. And so we decided to, you know, just sort of dig in and cohabitate. And we've, you know, made a nice little life here, although I have no friends yet. It's so weird for me. Usually I move all the time. I make friends easily, you know. This is it, you know, I met this lady at the falls. But it has been fascinating because I've moved to this giant tourist destination at the beginning of the world closing. And I've just been, you know, like we all do when you go somewhere new, you take your camera and you go out exploring. And I've just haven't been in the normal mode of, I don't know, overthinking and over symbolizing and having all these layers to my work. And I've just been shooting Instagram and Insta film and making like artist trading cards and zines. I'm doing stuff that's really fast and I can just sort of process quickly. And for me, this is part of it. I found a cheap Holga lens. And so being able to sort of have that dreamy aesthetic that I love, but on my DSLR camera was sort of a nice casual way to like be out and about and shooting. And the falls in general is beautiful. If you haven't been, it's just, you know, it's quiet and loud and slow and fast all at the same time, like how water that's big and moving is. And then I saw this young lady in her scrubs, and I just, so many of my friends are in the nurse and hospital industry, and they've just had, you know, like a whole other level of intense time that we have. I had just spent the night before we went out this day, I'd spent chatting with a friend of mine on Facebook, and she was just you could just tell she'd been in tears. She'd been going to the Home Depot trying to find stuff to wear to work the next day because there was nothing at her hospital. She's a nurse in Philly, big busy house. And I saw this young lady, and she's just like, all by herself looking at the falls, and it just really spoke to me. I did, I'm not a natural street photographer, so I did, run over and ask her for permission because you can't even see her face. I felt like I wanted to, sort of acknowledge. And it was really nice. She literally just started in the healthcare industry too. So for me, it just kind of evokes how I was feeling at the time and how a lot of us were, I'm sure.
When I first saw this, my first question was this posed? Because it almost seems too, it's so perfect in its representation of what's going on here.
No, and I didn't shoot it specifically for this, but I'd shot it just like a couple weeks before.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's just, the falls lonely in general are weird, just weird. They're still pretty empty there, even when it's nice. It's just weird.
The falls is just so awesome, but it's usually inundated with people and tourists. And there's just one lonely healthcare worker. So to me, that's very symbolic of what the period of time was.
And for me, it was as well. I was really definitely a departure from what I normally do, but I was really, and it was nice to meet her. She's sort of an introvert, but so she was thrilled that nobody was at the falls. She said, she goes, because everybody's local, it's there, at least last year. We're having a few more. So,
well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Katerina, I don't think she's here.
I kind of really wanted to know how to pronounce her name properly.
I'm sure I didn't do it properly, but it's a beautiful image.
Right, exactly. And it's a recurring theme, right? Looking through the windows.
And hands, the use of hands.
And the hands,
we had a lot of hands
represented, but this time, of course, in black and white, which it's beautifully done. So
it is. If anyone wants to add anything or make comments, please just unmute yourself and speak up. Linda, is Linda here?
I am here.
Hi, there you are. Hi.
This piece is, I thought it really resonated with the theme of the exhibition. It embraces science and technology with art and nature. And it's an image of an ethereal figure, actually an MRI of a human skull head. And then it shows that we're revealed and concealed in a raw and vulnerable state. For me, medical imagery that I use a lot in my work represents a kind of a fear factor, I think, what everyone has been feeling during this pandemic. And for me, the environment is more of a reassurance. And by putting these two elements together, well, that's what I do. I put them together and get the emotional response of whatever it is that you're thinking. Yeah, fear and reassurance.
So when I first saw this, I knew it was a brain, but also it looks as if it's the rings of inside of a tree. Mm-hmm. And so further connecting the idea of nature and humanity, which I thought was very interesting, the way that you've done this.
Thank you.
Are you a medical doctor?
No, I'm not, but I've been working with medical research and art for about 15 years now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Diane?
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Diane.
Hi, Fran.
It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in years.
I met Fran when she came out to California and got in touch with me. We went on an adventure along the coast near San Francisco. We went to that antique store that you found things in.
And we went and visited goats and sheep. Remember, we went to the
at the Harley Farms. Yes. Well, thank you everybody for selecting this image. I really appreciate being in this show. This body of work has become very dear to my heart and very symbolic. Normally, I would never do self-portraits. I really don't like being photographed, but at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're having an anxiety attack in bed, one of the ways to kind of help yourself is to get out a camera and start photographing. And that's how this series to being. I was having a very difficult time sleeping, and I would bring my iPad to bed to kind of take my mind off of things. And I just got this idea to play around with Hypstomatic Tintype, the app, because it was one of the apps that let you reverse the camera to do selfies. And I happen to have a flashlight nearby. So it's, you know, pitch dark room, and I'm using a flashlight as the light source. And as I began to play around, I'd never used this app before. I started getting these kinds of images that really spoke to me about the anxiety and isolation that everyone I knew seemed to be feeling. And that's essentially how this body of work came into being. There's about 45 self-portraits in the body of work now. And it was a pretty remarkable experience, and it really helped me alleviate essentially the anxiety that I was feeling. So art is definitely good medicine.
It is. Well, I've seen some of Diane's other images from this series, and I would recommend that all of you take a look at them. Are they on your website now?
Well, my website is on Lens Culture.
Okay.
So if you go to lensculture.com and do a search for Diane Fenster, the series is called A Long History of Dark Sleep. And you can find the images.
Diane's been posting them from time to time, and they're just wonderful, Diane. Thank you,
Fran.
They're really, really beautiful images. And I'm glad that they were able to help you emotionally, but they stand alone beautifully as independent images as well, each one of them.
And I know they're difficult. Some people get very upset when they see them because there's a lot of emotion behind them. But, you know, I don't believe in mincing words with my work. You know, it has to be what it is. And I appreciated, in a strange sort of way, I appreciated the isolation because it brought out this body of work. But I have to say, today was my first day out, and I went to a museum. Yay.
Congratulations.
So the other end of it, I went to the De Young Museum. It's the last bit of the Frida Kahlo show.
Oh.
So I finally got to see it. I got to meet a friend of mine, and it was like a normal life again. And I can't begin to tell you how happy everyone was at the museum. Everyone was saying hello and, you know, so glad you're here. And, you know, it's just like a wonderful, wonderful.
Oh, that's great. I haven't made it to a museum yet, but soon.
Hey, Diane.
It's exciting.
Diane, it's Lee Smith. I think my comment on this is, first of all, I think it's absolutely stunning, but it's using what you used in that app to do it just takes it to another level for me. I think it's gorgeous. I mean, it's just,
thank you.
It really, I can see these on a wall.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible statement as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Maybe I know somebody who can help get them on a wall.
What's that?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Diane. I was just plugging myself as I try and do. I know someone who could help you get these printed very nicely to hang on a wall.
Thank you, Bob.
Oh, and I just want to echo Lee's thing. It really is quite, it's beautifully haunting, you know, the image. And it's, yeah, it is. And then also knowing when you said using the tintype app, I see a lot of this stuff from people, and a lot of it just, they shouldn't be allowed to use the app. So this is, it's done, it's a hard thing to do right. And you don't see a lot of it. So
I agree.
Well,
Right.
you know, believe me, you know, as a photographer, I was a little bit like, well, should I really use an app?
Yes.
I felt guilty. You know?
When it's done right, it works. And
I got over it pretty quickly once I started seeing what I was coming up with. I figured this is right. It's totally right. Thank you. Thank you all for your comments.
Diane, how big are they? How big do you see them?
When I print them, they're 11 by 14.
Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
they need to be bigger. Seriously.
You know, Bob, there's really not enough data there for them to be much bigger because they were done on an iPad.
You'd be surprised. We did a show and actually Lee was included in it. And they go pretty nicely to 20 by 20, 22 in length. You'd be really surprised. So try section.
Okay.
Or send me the file and I'll help you with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it still too late to send in for what may be this show?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I'll be doing that.
Great.
Yeah, if anything, it's early because we still don't have a date.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's still plenty of time.
Yeah, all of you that are, here tonight, and I've only gotten a few files actually from people that, they're still welcome.
Yeah, and we are really looking forward to putting this together as a physical exhibition. I mean, that's definitely the end game. This whole artist talk is really kind of a bridge to that ultimate event in taking it from the online exhibition into this artist talk and then to the physical exhibition. So
I'm a little worried about time because we've already been together an hour and I don't want people to start fading out. So I think we'll have to go a little bit more quickly. Is that okay? Is that okay?
I'll shut up.
Oh, no. Sanjari, I don't think he's here.
That light again.
Yeah, the light's amazing.
Right? The interior light coming out is perfect.
But also it's clear that he's in his house looking down at somebody else's. We're all in our little isolated cocoons.
Right, checking the news.
So this is Yorgos's.
I believe
He said he couldn't be here.
Oh, he did. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he did get in touch. I think he's in Greece, actually. Abby Hepner, is she here?
Abby's here.
I'm here.
Hi. You want to tell us about this?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you to Michael and Fran and Bob and Blue. Like, it's great to be included and just also to see, how much creativity comes out of, something sort of crazy like this. Like prior to the pandemic, I was working and traveling a couple of times a month and frankly, a little bit exhausted. And about a week before, the pandemic really hit and a lot of schools went online, I had this thought like, gosh, this isn't sustainable. Like I would love for the world to slow down for a little while. And then when it did, I was like, oh no. Like,
that's your wish.
But it's funny because I felt just as busy and overwhelmed and full of anxiety during the pandemic as, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. And it's kind of like traveling, like you never escape yourself. And so, for me, this photo is about this kind of like tension between comfort and discomfort and between the known and unknown. The internal and external world, and also kind of, this desire to escape, whatever it is we're sort of dealing with. And this comes from a series about a home, but the home is a metaphor.
Well, I mean, I think, again, Fran and I both immediately responded positively to this image, and I know for me it has a very cinematic quality to it. It literally feels like it was a still pulled out of a film, and there's just so much. There's a lot happening here. I feel very drawn into the photograph, and the juxtaposition of the left to the right being such a different scene, but still within the same scene, is, I mean, it's not that it's off-putting, but I think that's what's creating a lot of the tension that we're seeing here. And you're immediately kind of drawn into the room, that it looks like you're being drawn out of the window to a certain degree as well, with your body posture and the curtains moving. Again, there's a lot going on here. And I find myself kind of transfixed by this image, and I'm really, really happy that it is in this exhibition.
And I love that we don't see any furniture, that the room is empty and barren. It just really, it works very well. Okay, Dawn Surratt.
Dawn, I think Dawn emailed earlier and said she wasn't going to be able to make it after all. So
I love this.
Yeah, I think that kind of, the title alone kind of says it all, right?
Introspection, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need to belabor it. It's pretty clear.
Blue's not speaking up, but he's chatting that this is one of his favorites. Oh,
Good.
I'm sorry. Abby's is one of his favorites. Pardon me.
Which one was Abby's?
That's one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Abby, congratulations. This is one of Blue's favorites. Okay, this is Sal Kidd. Beautiful, beautiful image. Her work is always very lovely.
Yeah, it's all of her work has that kind of dreamlike quality to it, right?
Yep.
Sarah? No, Sarah's not here. Okay.
This is what a lot of couples ended up looking like after 6 months living together, I'm afraid. Oops. I remember we had a debate about this image. I really loved it.
Yeah, you immediately.
I did.
And I'm familiar with a lot of Lisa's work, so.
Oh, I hadn't seen it.
And it's also, actually, I'm the one that mentioned to you that it was done with Polaroid.
Mm-hmm.
And that had, that painterly quality that we see in the soft color palette.
And the soft focus.
Yeah.
And the stripes of her shirt and what appears to almost be stripes of the frame. I just thought this was really wonderful. Just the layout of it.
Yeah. And again, not looking out of a window, but looking towards a photograph of an unknown person. I think that was kind of interesting and something very different.
And this is just a beautiful photograph by Lee, who was here.
I still am. Thank you.
Yes, Lee.
This was all, this was part of a series. We lived down in a little community near the water. And right after they started shutting down places that were near a little beach, and the town center went down and everything else. And because it's kind of a small area, I was able to get out and walk. So this is all iPhone stuff. And I began to shoot, there's a series here of not only the lone tree, which I think sort of drove the whole thing. It was indicative of what was going on, but it was also the way the light seemed to fall a little bit the afternoon that I took this. It was one of those muted sun through a lot of clouds, and it had one of that funny type of look. I enhanced it a little bit, but I did a whole series of the tree by itself, the bench by itself. There's a picnic table, there's a lifeguard stand, and there's a lone pier, and it all just, there was nobody around, and it was just the water was still, the air wasn't moving, and I just captured what I was feeling, and I think what a lot of people were feeling at that time. But it was more indicative of how long is this going to go along? I mean, how long is the bench going to be empty? I want to go there and sit, and the beach was closed. theoretically, there was yellow tape all over the place. You couldn't even go use the bench. I should have taken that picture as well, but I didn't. Anyway, that's what drove this whole quiet series.
So you said this is part of a series. How many have you
There are
done?
probably 8 or 10 in it right now that I took, and I tried to take them sort of with the same feel and at the same time of day and everything. I think I took 4 the day that I did this, and then I added a little bit more, but the light was different each day. So they all have a little different feel, even though the subject matter and the tonality of the composition is similar. The light, the feel of the light each day made them each a little different, which added to the mystique of the whole thing as well.
And how big can you print them?
Bob, how big did we print this one?
We did it small, but all these, truly, can go 20 to 28 inches tall, really without any problem.
We have no problem in going 11 by 14.
Yeah.
The other thought that I had too was reducing these all to very small, doing a small, simple frame around, like tiny prints of these. Maybe I'm going to make up numbers, 6 by 4, 5 by 7, something like that, with a larger frame around it. And it's sort of, I was thinking that in terms of both display and also accentuating the loneliness of it. So a bigger mat or an oversized mat, a simple frame, and a tiny print in it, I thought might be a hugely dramatic statement, which has been in the back of my head for a while.
One thing I'm going to interrupt with, I've known Lee for a long time now, and when he says there's like maybe 8, add at least 1, maybe 2 zeros to that within this series that he has created, and we're lucky to get it down to 20, because not only just the volume, but the quality, is, I think, Fran, Lee a little bit also, that it makes it hard to edit because of just vast quantity and vast quality of it.
You know what I love the most about this image, Lee, is it almost the bench, the seat of the bench looks almost luminous, and it just pops. It's just beautiful. The reflection, I don't know what I'm seeing. It must be reflection of the light on the bench seat.
It was just a little bit it was a strange light that day.
Very
and it was a white bench. So we just picked it up where everything else, even with, vignetting this thing slightly, the bench still popped off of it. I did a black and white of this also, which I almost like as well. So I don't know, that's a whole other series. So we'll talk about that later.
But that's
one of the things that you had mentioned about this image, the word that I picked out was quiet. And I think that's what makes it such a strong photograph, is it's a quiet image of a quiet scene. And as a viewer, we don't know what was going on around you. You describe, the surrounding area, but, without seeing it, we really have no concept of that. So it's interesting, in the way that you crop it, in the way the light is, and with the vignetting, that accentuates, I think, the quietness of it. And in terms of the exhibition, I think that I have no choice but to personalize a lot of this in terms of when it comes to time to choose the images that are going to be in the exhibition. I take a very kind of personal approach to it. And one of the things that I had been experiencing early on was quiet, because at the very beginning, literally things just shut down. And I remember specifically walking my dog through the neighborhood and not hearing another person's voice, not hearing the sound of a car, not hearing the sound of a plane. And I live fairly close to a regional airport, and it was the quietest I've ever experienced it in my life in the 18 years that I'd lived in that neighborhood. And it was both disconcerting and comforting at the same time, which was very odd to me. And of all of the things that I experienced through this last year plus of the pandemic, those moments were probably the most significant for me. And this image immediately reminds me of that time.
Thank you. Very nice. Nice words.
Diana, I don't think she's here. She's in Hawaii. But her work is wonderful.
That doesn't mean she can't be here.
Yeah, she's probably on the beach.
Yeah. Having a good old time.
It's very early there.
Yeah. A lot of Diana's work, I think, would fit in this. I mean, this is not wildly different than a lot of the work that she does. So it was easy to see it kind of fit the mold that we had created for this exhibition.
Alareza, Alareza. She's not here. We went back and forth on this image, I think.
I think so too. And I think one of the reasons why was because there was that earlier image where we're looking through the window at the
Right. It was similar.
Yep. And it had that same kind of quality to it, but this was very different because now we're in the inside. We're watching somebody from the inside looking out.
Right, she's looking out, and the other man was inside the room.
Right, it literally could have been the same image from, a 180 in terms of the perspective.
True. Zhao Peng.
Yeah, this image was shared quite a bit, I think.
Oops, sorry.
Between all of us. Again, introspection, kind of some chaos involved in your thinking, perhaps. And then that's the soft, grainy black and white. I mean, I'm immediately drawn to that. So this was a kind of a no-brainer for me as far as having it in the exhibition.
There's also a dreamy quality to it.
Right.
Which is wonderful.
I love that about it.
Matthew Finley.
Matthew, he was here earlier, but he had to leave, unfortunately, for a workshop. I'm familiar with a lot of Matthew's work. I've interviewed him before and highlighted his work in, I think, a couple of places, but not this particular work. In fact, I think when I had first been interviewing him, this became a new body of work for him. And this was an image from the very early stages of that. But it became, the loving, caring kind of quality that we're seeing in here is something that we were all kind of participating in because, being both a protector and wanting to feel protected at the same time during the early days of the pandemic was a common theme. And for me, this image was really representative of that.
It's almost like a pieta in some ways. That
yes,
the sense of comfort and caring is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Dawn.
Hi, I'm here.
Good. Tell us about this.
This is actually part of a series that I started during the lockdown. I was obsessed with tracking the evening light coming into the apartment, and this only happens in the early spring and part of the summer. It happens every year, but I think this was the first time I actually really noticed it, like where it lands and how quickly it shifts. So I was a little bit obsessed. There was one evening where I for over an hour, we were having dinner and I kept getting up and photographing every 2 minutes. And I think it drove my partner insane. The evening light for me usually signifies summer, going out with friends, hanging out on the beach, going on hikes and things like that. But of course, none of that happened last year. And so this image is of my youngest child. She's 3 at the time. She would I think she was bringing her dish to the sink and she was just paused in that light. So I had her stay really still so I could capture it. My family's, they're actually really good natured about my obsessive ways. And they roll their eyes, but they're good about stopping if I need to take a picture of them. So yeah, that was pretty much one of my lockdown projects. It was just tracking the light.
I don't know.
Whoever that is, please mute.
I think Pamela Gallagher's iPhone, if you could mute your iPhone, that would be great.
Dawn, this is a beautiful picture, and I'm impressed you were able to get a 3-year-old to sit.
It's some guy who's
picture.
Thank you.
The light is amazing, but also the way the light forms almost a wedge in the red. It's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that this is again another recurring theme that we saw, not just with the images that we chose, but many of the images that didn't make it into the final exhibition, was the fact that people are now home, and I think that they were responding to those kind of quieter, smaller moments in their lives that normally in the daily course of your life, that just kind of pass you by, or they go unnoticed by you because you know, you have other priorities to take care of, and suddenly life is kind of slowed down to a crawl, and now we're seeing all of these things that we kind of come to appreciate now, that are again, going back to like Lee Smith's image, that are quieter images, and we kind of find some solitude in.
Well, one of the things that you talked about with the slowing down, and for myself, when I deal with people and look at their work, because digital is so quick that they don't stop and look. And you had mentioned how, I don't know how many years you've been in your apartment, but you see this.
I'm trying to find them.
Well, we hope you find them, whoever that is. But you slowing down now and you see it, and you became obsessed by it.
Curtis Smith.
And it got you moving, but it still helped you stop and look. And that's.
No, it's Lee.
You know,
Curtis is just phoned in.
Bob, maybe you could mute her. Bob.
Yeah, I don't know who that is, but
Pamela Gallagher.
Be quiet.
I'm trying to do it. Oh, I'm going to leave. I'm just going to leave the whole thing.
Nice to see you.
He's gonna leave.
But, getting back to Dawn, and for most of the people here, because I see we're getting down to the last image, I just wanted to say that you can really see the slowness in the work, in the passivity, if that's the right word for it, that there's this stillness. Well, here maybe not, but of the work and with the pandemic. And again, for myself, as somebody with the gallery, with curating, and then with teaching, you got to slow down and look. And I think for everybody we've seen, if you didn't normally work that way, you are now. And, with Dawn, the way you said that is that light is there, but now you've seen it. And it really is beautiful.
Thank you very much.
So the last image is Richard's. I know he's here, or he was.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Richard.
Okay, good.
Hi.
Good. Thanks for including me first. The other thing I wanted to start with is commenting on the title of the show. I mean, Internal Dialogue is such a perfect title. And as you went through the wonderful images, it reflected, how everybody was thrown into isolation. And for those of us who were able to accomplish any work, the work that came out obviously reflected those internal thoughts, and many of which were done in isolation. So this image, I'm glad you picked it. It's the last one I did before leaving San Miguel Allende. It's part of a series of work that I've been privileged to be able to do in Mexico, in the Central Mountains. And I'm interested in imaginary landscapes. I just go to strange places to pick up my landscapes. Instead of Yosemite or the Dolomites, I stare down into an agave plant. I've actually only printed one image of an agave plant that actually looks like an agave. You can tell what I'm photographing. But these are studies of parts of an agave plant that that I have shot over the last 4 years. And this series I was doing during March of last year. And it was becoming clearer and clearer to everybody, as you know, that the pandemic was racing around the world, and we were considering, when we had to leave. And this was done within days of having to leave. And I named the whole series Agave and Turmoil because I was intoning that the plants were experiencing some of the turmoil that not only I, but the rest of the world was experiencing at that time. So thanks again.
That's interesting. I'm glad that you mentioned the backstory on all of this, because otherwise we would never really know. And I think that one of the reasons that I was drawn to the image, it was interesting to me to include something that was more of a kind of a split between a still life and a landscape, as something that would represent an internal dialogue. And this almost never happens with me, but one of the interesting things that happened with this image is the title of the image itself. And it's interesting that you also say that it's the entire body of work is called Agave and Turmoil now. But that jumped out at me. And normally the titles, are kind of neither here or there for me, but I think Turmoil was really something that just resonated with myself. And I mean, it looks like it's in turmoil. And the fact that if it didn't say it was an agave, I would never know. So congratulations on creating something that was both confusing and enticing to me.
Yeah, well, thank you. The only part of the turmoil which was difficult was that because I was rushing out of Mexico, I actually lost the Photoshop file, and luckily I have the TIFF file.
Oh.
So yeah, the transfer back to the States wasn't as smooth as you'd like.
Well, I'm glad at least that made it.
Yeah.
Well, I will stop sharing so we can see each other.
Actually, I kind of wanted to mention something too that Richard brought up, was the title of the exhibition. And in terms of, I think how we come about with using those specific words. Internal was the obvious part, but dialogue, I think, was not so obvious to me, because the other thing that you could have called this was an internal monologue. And I think that might be what people would normally think about the sort of a concept. People are kind of discussing things with themselves internally, especially during an event as dramatic as COVID, because of the isolation that occurred. But for me, the idea of making it an internal dialogue was that because we were isolated from one another, that we were yearning for having an actual dialogue with somebody else. And in turn, these images were supposed to be having a dialogue with each other in terms of spelling out what it was that we were trying to conceive of with the exhibition.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining tonight. It was wonderful seeing more of the work in the one place. It was great for me to hear Fran and Michael, and then the photographers that have been here to interject and share. And as soon as we can figure out how we're going to be able to make this in-person photographic exhibition, because they will all be prints, we'll keep you posted. And then again, just as myself, as I always say when I do these events, shameless self-promotion, if there's anything you're interested in or curious about how I can help you with your printing, please reach out. And again, this has been recorded. So like I said, I'll get it to Michael and Fran and to Blue, So hopefully it'll get up on the links to everybody's webpage. And also, like I said, I'll have it on my YouTube channel that I have. There, not much is on it, but we'll have a little. But hopefully, Michael, you can send a link to people, or Blue if it goes up on the website. So again, if anybody has any comments that they might want to share before we say goodnight. I know here on the East Coast, dinner's a little late tonight, but
I just want to thank everyone for your beautiful artwork. It was a fabulous opportunity for Michael and me to review this work. And I want to thank Bob for hosting this. And I particularly want to thank our friends in France. It must be 3 o'clock in the morning, and they deserve a medal for being able to stay up this late. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, thanks for hanging in with us all.
Thanks again.
Thank you all. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.